Howdy folks, welcome to day 2 of microeconomics. Here's what we're going to talk about in this particular session. We are going to cover 3 main topics, and they're right over here. First, we're going to talk about something called marginal analysis. The second thing we're going to talk about is the long run versus the short run. And the third thing that we're going to talk about is 2 concepts that are related to each other. One of them is called the law of diminishing returns, and the other one is called the law of increasing opportunity cost. Okay? So let's talk about marginal analysis first, okay? Shall we? The idea in economics of marginal, okay? In order to understand that, let's review something we talked about on day 1. We talked about we have these net benefit, that's an N right there, sorry, it's not a very good looking N. Net benefit is equal to the benefit that you get from doing something minus the cost. So anything you do, or anything a business does or a household does, there's a benefit to the thing that they do, hopefully, and then there's a cost associated with achieving that benefit. And when you subtract the cost from the benefit, whatever's left over is the net benefit. Now, if the benefit is actually smaller than the cost, then the net benefit will actually be a loss. It'll be a negative benefit, and a benefit can be negative. It's considered a loss, okay? So this is the general formula for how we understand how we benefit from things. And the purpose of economics is to try and analyze and understand the benefits that we get from doing things. In fact, we're trying, basically, in microeconomics especially, we're trying to make decisions. Every decision that we make is an economic decision, because every decision that we make has a benefit, has a cost, and then therefore has a net benefit. And one of the things that we're trying to achieve is, if we have the opportunity to do 2 different things, if we're comparing 2 different things, and to boil everything down to where there's 2 possibilities, okay? And then what we'll do in our minds is, between those 2 possibilities, the best 2 alternatives is we will identify the benefit of each one and the cost of each one in our minds. And businesses actually can do this on paper, because the things they do, they can boil down to actual money benefits and money costs. Okay? But so then whichever of the 2 things give the greater net benefit, that's the one that we choose, right? The thing that we didn't choose actually becomes a part of the cost, because that's something that we had to give up. It is the opportunity cost, okay? So the idea of marginal analysis goes like this, okay? First of all, the word marginal means, the next one. There's several ways we can look at this. The next one, okay? Or one more, okay? Or the additional after one more, okay? So here's what we're going to try and understand. We're going to understand 2 concepts here. One of them is called marginal benefit. The other one is marginal cost, okay? So let's talk about marginal benefit, and marginal cost. Okay. So marginal benefit basically means the added benefit, the additional benefit after you get one more. So this idea of net benefit minus cost, is the idea of, for example, let's say that you eat 1 slice of pizza, okay? You're going to get a benefit from that 1 slice of pizza. Several different kinds of benefits. You're going to fulfill your hunger. It's going to taste good. Maybe it's your favorite food, so you get the excitement of anticipating your favorite food. So you get a whole bunch of benefits, and then the cost of eating that one slice of pizza is, let's say you had to buy the pizza, you had to give up eating, let's say, a hamburger so that you could eat pizza. So you had to give things up in order to eat the pizza, right? And so when you take the total benefit and subtract the cost, you get the net benefit of one slice of pizza. But now let's say that you want to eat a second slice of pizza. So that's one more slice of pizza. It's the next slice of pizza, or one more slice of pizza. So the marginal benefit means the little bit of extra benefit, the additional benefit after eating one more slice of pizza. So if you eat one more slice of pizza, then you will get a little more benefit. So this will go up. But here's the thing is that when you eat another slice of pizza, there is also an additional cost. So that's the marginal cost. Marginal cost is the additional cost after eating one more slice of pizza. And you can apply this to anything. Okay, there's, how about cars? Some people own more than one car. Some celebrities own hundreds of cars, right? And so when you buy more than one car, you get a benefit out of having one car, and there's a cost associated with having one car. But if you wanted a second car, first of all, no one can drive more than one car at a time. So one person owning two cars is kind of, you have to have a good reason to have a benefit from having that second car. So let's say that you have a car and you have a pickup truck. So the pickup truck is for when you're doing work, and the car is when you're driving around, let's say, with your friends or something like that. Okay? So to have a second car, the added benefit of having a second car, in fact, let's say that the second car you buy is exactly like the first one you bought. If that's the case, then the added benefit is extremely small. You wouldn't really get much more benefit out of having a second one of the same car, but the cost would go up significantly. So why doesn't everybody out there in the world, I own a Honda Civic. Why don't I have another Honda Civic? Why don't I have two Honda Civics for me? Because the benefit of having another Honda Civic is not nearly as high as the cost of having another Honda Civic. I would have to pay annual taxes on both of the cars. So the new one, the second car, I'd have to pay the annual taxes on it. I'd have to have insurance on it. And so the cost, I'd have to buy the car. So the costs associated with having the second car would be much higher than the benefit of having the second car, because I already have a Honda Civic, don't need another one. Now, if my second vehicle is a truck that I can use to do work, and doing that work saves me from having to pay someone else to do that work, well, then now I have a significant benefit for having a pickup truck as a second vehicle, and then the costs associated would not be as high as the benefit. And now, because I have a positive net benefit, it could be a good decision. Okay? So the way that we make these decisions in our minds is not by comparing the overall benefit of all of our cars or all of our food with the overall costs of all of our food, but the way that we decide how many of something that we should purchase, the quantity, and we're going to get to quantity in a few minutes, the way that we decide on the quantity that we should buy or the quantity that we should consume is we analyze each additional one that we're going to consume, one at a time. So yeah, I'll buy the first one, or let's say pizza. Sure, I'll have 3 slices of pizza. I see the benefit greater than the cost on the first, second, and third. But by the 4th slice of pizza, the costs are just too great. I'm going to feel crummy. I know that I'm probably going to get gas. I'm probably going to, it's going to cost me a lot more money. And honestly, that 4th slice of pizza is just not going to taste as good as that first and second and third slice of pizza did. So the benefit is going to be extremely small, but the cost of that 4th slice is going to be so high, I don't want the 4th slice. but I do want the first slice, I do want the second slice, and I do want the third slice. So we as humans, when we analyze whether we want, whether we're going to make a decision to consume something or not, is we analyze each individual unit based on how much additional benefit we'll get and how much additional cost we will have for that thing that we want to consume. And that is called marginal analysis. Let me give you definitions here for marginal benefit and marginal cost. Marginal benefit is the benefit gained by adding one more. So by adding one more slice of pizza to my plate, that one more that I'm adding to my plate has a benefit, and that benefit of that one more slice of pizza is called the marginal benefit of that slice of pizza. And then the marginal cost, of course, is the cost required by adding one more. The cost required by adding one more. Now, businesses have to make this decision too. They have to decide, well, hey, how many are we going to make? Are we going to make 30 of them? Are we going to make 40 of them or 50 of them? But they're going to make the decision based on each additional one. Well, yeah, it makes sense. Okay, so the benefit of the 30th one is really high, and the cost of the 30th one is less than the benefit. And so the additional benefit, the cost of the 30th one, the marginal cost, the additional cost is smaller than the additional benefit. So overall, we get more net benefit from the 30th one. What about the 31st one? Well, in order to produce a 31st one, we're going to have to hire more people. We're going to have to buy some more stuff. Now, the cost of all that, those additional, the additional things we have to buy, and also we could be doing something different with some of our other resources, and so the cost is really high for the 31st unit, and the benefit isn't as high. So now the benefit of producing the 31st car is smaller. The marginal benefit of producing the 31st car is smaller than the cost of producing the 31st car. So now we're actually going to lose. Our net benefit of the 31st car is going to be negative. So it's going to be a loss to produce the 31st car. So let's not produce the 31st car, and we will produce only 30 cars. Okay, so businesses use this idea. So you have to understand marginal benefit. You have to compare. What we do is we compare the marginal benefit of what we're going to consume with the marginal cost of what we're going to consume. And as long as the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost, then we'll go ahead and consume it because it's going to give us a positive net benefit, which is good for us. It now gives us more satisfaction, and we are more satisfied by consuming that thing than we would be if we didn't consume the thing. Okay? So let me give you guys an example here. I want to put something up here. I want to remind you about something. Remember that the profit of a company is given by the revenue of the company minus the cost. Right? And so, and then the utility of a, the net utility of a consumer, that's you and me when we eat pizza or drink soda, the net utility that we get from consuming things is equal to the utility of consuming that thing minus the cost of consuming it. So these formulas are basically the same thing as they're specific formulas of this benefit minus cost formula. This is the general formula for any economic decision maker. This is the specific formula for businesses, and this is a more specific formula for individuals who are consuming things. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I want to create an example for you to help you understand this marginal benefit and marginal cost idea. Okay? All right, here's an example. Let's say that to consume 1 unit, that a person will benefit, get a benefit from consuming that thing, and we can convert it into dollars. It can be converted into a scale of satisfaction or something like that. Some economists use the word utils as a unit of measure, but utils is just a made-up number, a made-up unit, a made-up concept. But because it exists up here in your brain, you know, money exists on paper, but the satisfaction that you experience, it exists up here in your brain, okay, because of what you experience from your senses, right? You know, when you see a movie that you enjoy, you get utility. When you taste food that you enjoy, you get utility. When you smell something that, let's say, like roses or something, you get utility. When you feel things like, you know, let's say you I don't know, go swimming in the ocean, you enjoy the feel of the water on your body, okay, you're getting utility, satisfaction, but it's up here in your brain. But if we got to turn it into a number to really understand it. So let's say the benefit you get from doing something is 14, okay? And the cost of doing that is 9. So when we do the benefit 14 minus 9, we get 5. So now the net benefit of doing that thing, like let's say going swimming on a hot day, okay? There's a cost associated with it. You have to go inside your house. You have to change into your bathing suit, right? You have to take the time out of the day to go swimming. You might have to drive down to the beach and park your car, or you might have to, you know, drive to the pool in your community, okay? Or even if there's a pool in your backyard, let's say that you have to turn on the pump or something like that and get things going. But there are costs, especially the time that you have to take out of your day. There's also the cost of exposing yourself to the sun. So maybe you have to put on sunscreen before you go get in the water, and that's really annoying because I don't like putting on sunscreen, but I have to anyways because I have to protect my skin. So there's a cost associated with going swimming, but it's so refreshing and I'm enjoying it, and so when I take the benefit minus the cost, the net benefit that I get from that time of swimming is 5, okay? So let's say that was 1 hour of swimming, right? Okay, well, let's say that I want to spend another hour in the pool. And I'm thinking about spending another hour in the pool. And when I consider all of my benefits, okay, the added benefit here is now only going to be, it's going to add 4 to my benefit, okay? But I'm still getting benefit, right? But the cost of staying in the pool mostly is the time, because I've already put the sunscreen on, but I am exposing myself to the sun. I have to use up some time, right? Let's say the cost is 2, right? For that 1 more hour. This is for the second hour to stay in the pool, okay? So here's what's going to happen is my benefit is going up by 4, so now it's 18, right? My cost is going up by 2, so it's 11. And 18 minus 11 is equal to 7. So now my overall net benefit is 7. But here's the most important thing. The marginal benefit of that second hour is 4. And the marginal cost of that extra hour is 2. And in this case, the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost. So in my mind, I think, should I swim for another hour? And the answer is yes. Why? Because the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost. And this is critical. You have to understand this in economics. That economically, a person will likely say yes to doing something when the marginal benefit of doing that thing is greater than the marginal cost. So yes, I'm going to swim. And if I subtract the marginal benefit 4 minus the marginal cost 2, what I get is a marginal net benefit. A marginal net benefit of 2. And if I add that marginal net benefit to my benefit up here, 5 plus 2 is equal to 7. And my overall satisfaction has gone up. So here's what we're going to say. When marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost, then doing that thing, doing that one more thing will increase your overall satisfaction, your overall benefit, your overall utility, your overall profit. And so the decision rule goes like this. Here, a decision rule in economics says, when the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost, do it. Okay? Let's do another example. Okay, here's a second example. Let's say that you are consuming 7 of something. Let's say that 7 represents, I don't know, 7 hot wings or honey barbecue wings or something. You're at a party, you're like, man, they got some wings here. I'm gonna go have me a couple wings. So you have a wing, you're like, whoa, that wing was good. That was delicious. I'm gonna have another wing. And after, I don't know, 8 or 9 minutes, you find that you have had 7 wings. And after 7 wings, you have experienced a benefit of 53. And the cost associated with eating those 7 wings is 41. Okay, now what are some of the costs? Well, some of the costs are you had the opportunity to have some shrimp, but the shrimp just doesn't look as appetizing, and you don't like shrimp as much as you like hot wings or honey barbecue wings or whatever. Okay, so now you're thinking, maybe I will have an 8th honey barbecue wing, right? And here's what's going to happen. So let's say that we got this 8th honey barbecue wing, and let's say that that 8th honey barbecue wing is going to add a benefit of 6 overall to your happiness, to your satisfaction. So this is good. And here's one of the problems with non-economists. Non-economists sometimes will say, whoa, I'm going to get a benefit from the 8th one. They don't even ask about the cost, they just say yes. The answer is yes. If there is a positive benefit, then do it. They don't consider the cost, and a lot of times the cost is excessive, and then they lose in the end. Okay? But let's say that the cost associated with having that next barbecue wing is 8. Okay? And so what we look at here is that the marginal benefit is 6. And the marginal cost, let's see, marginal benefit is 6, and the marginal cost is 8, right? So in this case, the marginal benefit is less than the marginal cost, okay? And let's see what happens. So if we subtract, if we do 6 minus 8, our marginal net benefit is actually negative. It's negative 2, okay? And so our benefit becomes 53 plus 6 is 59 minus 41 plus 8 is 49, and 59 minus 49 is 10. What happened to our net benefit? It went from 12 down to 10. So we were satisfied and satisfied and satisfied, more and more satisfied eating these wings, but when we get to the 8th wing, we feel like eating an 8th wing is actually going to decrease our overall satisfaction with where we are in the world at that particular time. So here's the thing. We're going to say, you know what? If I eat another wing, I know I'm going to feel crummy. So you know what? I'm going to stop right now, and I'm not going to eat another wing. I am done with wings. Maybe you'll move on to, I don't know, maybe some chips and salsa. So you may move on to something else, because you're done having those honey barbecue wings, okay? And so here's the rule. So here's our decision rule. This is what I need you to learn. Is when the marginal benefit of a decision is less than or consuming one more. The marginal benefit of consuming one more is less than the marginal cost of consuming one more. You know that you're going to put yourself into a situation where you are worse off. Therefore, it is not worthwhile to do this, and your decision rule when marginal benefit is less than marginal cost is to say no. Okay, now we're going to talk about a concept called the long run versus the short run. Now we're going to use these phrases in this microeconomics class throughout the semester when we talk about several different things. But what you have to understand is that the long run versus the short run in economics, they don't mean time frames. Okay, the long run, and sometimes in business, some people will say, well, in the short run, that's like maybe 6 months to a year. And the long run, well, that's like a year out to like 3 years. In economics, it's not anything like that. So please do not mix up the long run and short run as considered in, let's say, business or marketing or some other area with economics. In economics, the definition of the long run and the short run has everything to do with what are called fixed inputs or fixed factors or fixed capital. Okay, so we need to understand there are three definitions that you're going to need, three words that you need to understand the definitions of in order to understand long run and short run. The first thing you have to understand is the definition of the word quantity. Now, you might be thinking, Mr. Ryan, I know what the definition of the word quantity is. Okay, great, but I'm going to give you an economics definition of the word quantity. Now, in economics, we use the letter Q to represent quantity, and you're going to see this letter Q a lot in this class. So, very simply, quantity is the number of units, let's erase that, the number of units produced by a business. Okay? All right. So, for example, let's say that a business makes hamburgers. The number of hamburgers that they produce, that's the quantity of hamburgers. Okay? You can also talk about quantity in terms of factors used, but generally when we speak of quantity, we talk about the number of units produced. Also, when we say number of units produced, we usually also refer to that as the number of units sold. Okay? So there is a difference between when a business produces something and then when it sells it, but oftentimes we don't really distinguish between the two, especially in this principles class. For now, we're going to consider producing something and selling something as the same thing. Okay? So this is units produced, units sold. Okay? Company makes bicycles. Let's say that they produce 10,000 bicycles in the month of November. Their quantity of production, their quantity for November was 10,000. Okay? All right, second concept is fixed input. So it's a factor input in the production process that's not determined by how much is produced. Okay, so an example of this would be a truck. Let's say there's a plumbing company and they have a truck that a plumber drives around in. Okay? So when that plumber gets in the truck, whether that plumber does 0 jobs in a day or 6 jobs in a day, they're still going to have that one truck. That truck is a factor input. It's used in production to fix plumbing or to produce plumbing. Okay? And whether or not they have that truck is not determined by whether or not that guy does 4 jobs in the day or 5 jobs in the day or 6 jobs in the day. Okay, so as the quantity produced changes, the fixed input, a fixed input does not change. So when a company buys a computer, they bought the computer and they use the computer. Whether they serve 1 person or 1,000 people, they have that one computer. Okay, I had a company years ago. I owned a massage therapy clinic, and in that massage therapy clinic, I had 12 massage tables. Now, I had 12 massage tables whether I served 1 client in a day or whether I served 50 clients in a day. Okay, so those massage tables were fixed inputs. I also had 11 massage rooms. Okay, 2 of the tables were in 1 room. Okay, and whether I only used 1 of those rooms 1 time in the day or if I used all 11 rooms for 10 hours throughout the day, it didn't matter how many massages I did. Well, not I did. employed massage therapists. It didn't matter how many massages my employees did in the building, in the facility. I had a fixed number of rooms. I had a fixed number of tables. The plumbing company has a fixed number of trucks. Let's say they have a fleet of 20 trucks. And if they have no customers on a Tuesday, they still have the 20 trucks. Those are fixed inputs, okay? So those are inputs. They're factors that are employed by the company, and those factors are not determined or changed because the quantity that's produced goes up or down. Those are called fixed inputs. Other examples of fixed inputs would be, for example, a factory. Okay, if a company has a factory with seven bay doors where they can load trucks up or unload trucks, and let's say that they have 43 production machines inside of the factory, whether they produce 5 million units in a month or 17 units in a month, they still have that building with all those doors and all those machines. Those are all fixed inputs. Okay? Now let's talk about variable inputs. Okay, variable inputs. Variable input, a variable input. A variable input is a factor input, and so I'm talking about factors of production here, land, labor, and capital, okay? A factor input in production, okay, so it's a production factor whose quantity changes, meaning it's variable. Doesn't variable mean changing? So the number of inputs is changing as the quantity, or as the, I didn't finish writing it. As the quantity produced changes. As the quantity produced changes. Okay? So, let's talk about pizzas. So you got a pizzeria, they have an oven. That's a fixed input. Even if they don't make any pizzas in a whole day, they still have that oven. The oven is there. Okay? However, if they make, let's say that each pepperoni pizza requires 50 pepperoni. That sounds like a lot. Okay, I'll say 50 pepperoni. It's a really good pepperoni pizza. Let's say that each pepperoni pizza requires 50 pepperonis. Well, as the quantity produced of pepperoni pizzas changes, if they make 7 pepperoni pizzas, then they need 350 slices of pepperoni, right? So when the quantity becomes 7, the quantity of pepperoni slices changes. But if we go from 7 up to 9 pepperoni pizzas, first they needed 350 slices of pepperoni. Well, now they need 100 more. They need 450 slices of pepperoni because they're going to make 2 more pizzas. So as the quantity produced changes, the quantity of factors changes. Those are called variable inputs. Okay? Now, variable inputs usually are the kinds of things that the thing is made out of. Okay, so to make a table, you need 4 legs and a tabletop, right? Well, now to make 9 tables, you need 36 legs and 9 tabletops. So the legs and the tabletops, and you also, let's say you need 40 screws, 40 little wood screws or something to make the table, okay? Well, now to make 9 tables, you need 360 wood screws. And so the material out of which you make the thing that you're making, you need more material to make it. And so materials are variable inputs. Other examples of variable inputs could be labor, okay? So the more tables you're going to make, you need more people to build them, right? So you need to hire more labor. So labor is typically a variable input, okay? So if you can understand this, what quantity is, if you can understand what a fixed input is, and if you can understand what a variable input is, then now you can understand the difference between the long run and the short run. Let's start with the short run, okay? So I've got a definition here. The short run for a business is, it's a period in which at least one input of a business is fixed. So let's say that a business has a lease. They're renting a warehouse, okay? And that warehouse is only so big, it only has so many doors, it only has so much space inside, right? Since they're under, let's say they're under a 3-year lease for that warehouse. Since they are under that lease, they are in the short run. They are making decisions in the short run for as long as they have that lease on that warehouse, okay? So if they have at least one. Now, let's say that they're not required to have any trucks or machines or anything else. The only thing that they have, the only fixed input that they have is that warehouse, and they have a 3-year lease on it. They're still in the short run. But let's say that they have 43 different inputs that are all fixed. They're still in the short run. So the definition of short run really only requires a business to have just at least one fixed input, okay? So here's what fixed inputs do to a business. So when a company is in the short run, when they're making decisions in the short run, they have certain constraints that they have to deal with, okay? So here's what we're going to say. Those fixed inputs limit the production possibilities. They limit the production possibilities. So the options that the business has, because the options to do business that business has because they're in the short run are limited. They can only make certain decisions because they are limited by their fixed inputs. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have fixed inputs. Fixed capital is very important to do business, okay? But it does, for the period that you have where your inputs are fixed, you are limited in your decision making, okay? All right, so let's see here. Possibilities of the company. All right, so here are 3 of the limitations that a business can have because they're in the short run. The first one, the business has limits on capacity. Okay? What that means is it's a quantity limit. They can only make so much stuff because they only have so much fixed capital. If a contractor only has 1 drill and 1 power saw, then in 1 work day they can only cut so much wood and they can only drill so many holes. And so they probably are not going to build a whole house in a week because they have a limited number of fixed resources. They can only get so much work done. Okay? So there's a quantity limit on how much can be produced. All right? All right. Now you may not know what capacity is, but I'm going to put a definition over here on the side. Okay, so here's a definition for capacity. Okay? Capacity for a business is the maximum quantity that a business can produce given certain fixed inputs. They only have so many fixed inputs, so they're limited on what they can produce. So for example, an example of capacity, well, not for a business, is a 20-ounce cup. You can only fit 20 ounces of liquid in a 20-ounce cup. How about a 30-foot trailer? A business that has a 30-foot trailer for a truck can only fit enough stuff in the 30 feet of the trailer. later, let's say a couple years later, they could buy a 52-foot trailer and then they can fit a lot more. But if all they have is a 30-foot trailer, they're limited on the capacity of what they can store or transport. Okay, the second limitation that a business has in the short run is that their cost structure is limited, and that affects their marginal cost. Okay, so they are constrained by the costs that they have to pay out for their fixed inputs. And because they're constrained by the costs that they have to pay out for their fixed inputs, that means that their marginal cost has a limitation on it, and that's going to affect the decisions that they make, because we already know that we'll only say yes to something when the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost. So they can only push the marginal costs so low because they're constrained by fixed inputs. The third constraint that businesses have in the short run is they might be too small, okay, to be able to gain entry into certain markets. So for example, in order to sell to large government agencies, your business has to be able to produce a certain quality at a high enough level with certain standards. Some businesses are too small to meet those standards, and they're limited by their fixed capital. They have too small of a stock of fixed capital to produce a lot, and therefore they are restricted from entering into certain markets. And all of these are the limitations that a business experiences in the short run. In a minute, we'll talk about the long run, when they can change all this and they can increase their capacity, they can change their cost structure, and they can grow and get bigger so that they can enter into certain markets. So now, in the long run, this is different than the short run. So the long run for a business is a period in which no inputs are fixed. That means that all inputs are considered variable. That means that the number of warehouses that the business has can be variable. They could have 5 warehouses, they could have 12 warehouses, they could have 1 warehouse. The number of trucks that they have in their fleet can be variable in the long run. They could sell a bunch of their trucks and go down to only 3 trucks, or they can buy more trucks and go up to 35 trucks. Okay? A company that has 7 computers that they use, they could sell some of their computers and go down to 5 computers, or they could buy 100 computers and become a much bigger company. In the long run, a business can go from being something very small to very large, or from very large to very small. In the long run, a business can move from Georgia all the way over to Washington State if they want to. There is nothing holding a business down. They can change the product they sell. In the long run, a business can stop producing bookshelves and they can start producing bedroom furniture. So the long run allows a company to change everything about the company. Then, here's the interesting thing, when they eventually settle down on their fixed inputs, that's when they go back to being in the short run. And so a business doesn't stay in the long run. They eventually make their decisions about fixed inputs, and then they go back to the constraints of the short run. But here's some of the things that a business can do in the long run. They can move to a new location. They can move to a new location, right? I remember there's a store over in a shopping center not far from here, and it's got a school supply store. They sell school supplies for teachers, right? And they were in a small location. Then a couple years later, they were in a bigger, and it's the same shopping center. They were in a bigger location, a bigger space that they rented from the landlord. Then a couple years after that, they moved down to kind of a medium-sized location. Okay, so those were all decisions they made in the long run, and then once they established the rental agreement, they were back into the short run. So a company can move to a new location in the long run. What else can they do in the long run? In the long run, a business can increase or decrease fixed capital. They can sell some of their desks and bookshelves or bookcases, or they can buy more desks and bookshelves. They can go from renting a business location and they can build a home office somewhere. Okay, so those are big changes that can be made. They can increase or decrease their fixed capital. They can sell all of their drills and saws, or they can buy more drills and saws in the long run. Also, in the long run, businesses can make decisions. They can make decisions without the constraint of contracts. Without the constraint of contracts. So let's say that a business has a bunch of employees, but those employees are... So let's say a business has employees that are union workers, okay, and they have a contract with the union that they're going to pay the employees a certain amount of money, give them certain benefits or whatever. But let's say that the contract is up in, let's say, a year and a half. Well, in a year and a half, that business is going back into the long run. They cannot renew the contract. They can make all kinds of decisions. They can close down their business, right? Because they are not constrained by any contracts. If they have a contract to supply a certain company with certain materials, once that contract is up, they don't have to do that anymore. They don't have to be ruled over by that contract anymore. And in the long run, and contracts are generally considered to be a certain kind of fixed input, okay? They're a type of constraint, okay? So that's what the long run is. So here's kind of a visual that I've created here. Let's say that we got a business, and today that business is making decisions about their business. Well, right now they have fixed inputs, so they're in the short run. But let's say they're looking ahead, and they know that in about 2.5 years that all of their fixed inputs are going to expire. In the next 2.5 years, let's say, they're not going to owe any more money on their trucks, and their lease on the location that they're at is going to come up for renewal. Any contracts that they had will have already expired within 2.5 years. So what they're thinking is this: they're going to be making decisions on the next set of fixed inputs. And now they can say, hey, look, in 2.5 years, we're not constrained by anything. What should we do? We can do all kinds of exciting stuff. We can grow, we can shrink, we can move, we can go into new markets, we can completely change the business. What should we do? So the long run is a period that a business looks at where they have the opportunity to creatively and imaginatively change everything about the business for the better. But once they're done imagining and once they're done making decisions, they're gonna have to build their own location or sign a lease, buy more fixed inputs, or sign new contracts. Eventually, they're gonna have to establish new fixed inputs, and then they're done with their imagination and they move back into a period of short run again. And that period will last. The short run will last for them up until all of their fixed inputs expire again, and then they can start dreaming and imagining what else they can do with the business in the long run. Okay, so that's the difference between the short run and the long run. All right, so we've covered the marginal analysis. We've covered the long run versus the short run. The only thing that we have left to talk about is the law of diminishing returns and the law of increasing opportunity costs. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm now going to switch over to my computer, and I know that y'all sometimes don't really like this, but since all I really have for these two things is just some definitions for you to write down and a couple of examples, I'm going to go ahead and do it on the computer, and then you can just write down those definitions and you can write down those examples. I do want to say that there is no reading in the textbook for these two things. The readings that you were assigned, I think you were assigned page 10 for this, and for long run versus short run, you were assigned pages 218 to 220, and that's all the reading that I have for you for this lesson. But what I'm going to give you for law of diminishing returns and law of increasing opportunity costs, there's no textbook reading for that. Your entire, everything you need to know about that for now is going to come out of the rest of the video that you're about to watch, and I'm going to do that from my computer. All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about here are two laws, economic laws, that are related to marginal benefit and marginal cost. And you already know what they are because I had them written on the board. We've got the law of diminishing returns, and then we've got the law of increasing opportunity cost. Now, before we even go over them, I want you to think about the names of these laws. We have the law of diminishing returns. When something is diminishing, that means that it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? So think about returns. Returns are like your benefits, your utility or your profit. So it's the law of benefits that are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, okay? So remember that. So we have the law of increasing opportunity cost. Increasing means that it's getting larger and larger and larger. And so when we think of opportunity costs, we're talking about a situation where opportunity costs are getting larger and larger and larger and larger. So keep that in mind as we go through these two laws. Now, the law of diminishing returns is related to marginal benefit, and the law of increasing opportunity cost is related to marginal cost. So what is the law of diminishing returns? The law of diminishing returns states that when increasing quantities of a variable factor, and or you could also say when increasing quantities of a good that you're consuming, when increasing quantities are added to fixed quantities that are not changing, okay? What'll happen is the marginal benefit of each additional variable factor or the marginal benefit of each additional good that you're consuming will become smaller and smaller, okay? This is also called, sometimes it's referred to as the law of decreasing marginal benefit, okay? In simple terms, the idea is if you keep adding more and more of something, like a good that you're consuming, like soda or pizza or a television show or a video game, if you keep adding more and more of something, a good or a factor, like labor or lumber or something like that, if you keep adding more and more of it to an unchanging situation, the benefits of each added thing will become smaller and smaller, okay? So the bottom line with the law of diminishing returns is that marginal benefit tends to decrease. So just remember that throughout the whole class, that marginal benefit tends to get smaller and smaller and smaller the more that you consume, okay? I'm going to give you an example here. So here's the idea. Basically, as you add more variable inputs like workers, but if you don't increase the number of fixed inputs like workstations, the added output of the added worker will be less than the added output of the previously added worker. So if you keep adding workers in a situation where you don't add more fixed inputs, then each worker they'll add to the production, but what they add to the production will become smaller and smaller and smaller. So here's my example. At my former business, I had 2 workstations with computers at the front desk to greet customers and to help them when they're checking in or checking out. I usually had 2 people. Working the front desk, okay? So I had 2 workstations and I had 2 people, 1 person at each workstation. Now, if I added a 3rd worker at the front desk, but I did not add an additional workstation, like a 3rd computer, then 3 people would have to share 2 computers. And what will happen is the employees, those workers, they'll start to get in each other's way. So the 3 workers will still, all 3 of them together, they'll probably get more done than the 2 workers. So the 3rd worker will add more work. I mean, they'll get more done. But the average work produced per worker, per person, will be less with the 3 workers than with the 2 workers. So here's the idea. Let's say 2 workers get, get 50 things done. Let's say the first worker gets 30 things done. Then I add a second worker, and that person gets 20 things done. So together, they get 50 things done. Okay, so the marginal benefit of the second worker is 20. But then when I add a third worker, that third worker only adds on an additional 15. And now between the 3 of them, they get 65 things done. Okay, so even though there is more work getting done, the benefit of adding each worker is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The first person added 30, the second person added 20, and the third person added 15. Okay, if I add a fourth worker, they'll probably only add another maybe 10 or 5, and eventually what will happen is if I have like 7 or 8 workers working at the front desk, it's not a very large area. They'll get in each other's way, and they'll actually start to get less work done because they're bumping into each other. Okay, so this is the law of diminishing returns. So that is, the return on adding an additional worker diminishes as you keep adding more workers without increasing fixed factors. All right, now let's talk about the law of increasing opportunity cost. Here's what the law of increasing opportunity cost states. It says that for each additional unit of a resource consumed or utilized for a benefit. Okay, so you're either consuming goods or you're using factors to produce something. Okay, so it's either a person consuming a resource for a benefit, for utility, or it's a business utilizing a resource for profit, okay, or for revenue. So for each additional unit, as you use more and more resources, the opportunity cost to do so gets larger and larger each time, okay? So the basic idea is if you keep doing the same thing repeatedly, you have to give up more and more to keep doing it, okay? So the cost of the first slice of pizza, let's say, is how much money you have to pay for the pizza, and you had to give up eating somewhere else, okay? So that's not too much of a cost. You would have had to pay for whatever you bought, and you would have had to give up eating somewhere else no matter what you ate, okay? But if you have a second slice of pizza, now the opportunity, again, you can't eat at another place. You have to pay money for that second slice of pizza, but now there's an additional cost of you're spending even more time eating. Maybe you're eating too much, and you don't get to diversify what you're eating, okay? And so the cost is getting larger and larger. It's possible that the other thing you could have eaten, which might have been, let's say, a piece of a calzone, that would have given you more satisfaction than the second slice of pizza would have given you, so you had to actually give up even more utility than you would have gotten if you had eaten the calzone instead of the second slice of pizza. So here's the bottom line with the law of increasing opportunity cost. That marginal cost tends to increase. So here's what we learned between these two laws, is that marginal benefit tends to decrease and marginal cost tends to increase. And what eventually happens is that marginal cost eventually becomes larger than marginal benefit, and you eventually have to choose to not do that thing anymore. All right, so here's an example. Let's say you play a video game. The first 2 hours costs very little. Okay, you might have to give up the opportunity to see a movie or a television show to play the video game.
But now after you played for 2 hours, now you're thinking, oh, should I keep playing? I have stuff I have to do. I'd like to catch that movie, or I have a test to study for, right? But instead, you decide to keep playing the video game for another 2 hours, okay? But it's going to cost you a little more. Now you're losing the time to study for an exam, and you could have watched a movie or a TV show. Okay, so you're investing more and more time into this video game. The longer you spend doing it, the greater the costs are going to mount up and mount up and mount up. Next 2 hours, you're going to keep playing the video game. Next 2 hours, you lost more study time, you missed more TV and another movie, plus your girlfriend or your boyfriend is mad that you didn't call them. And now they're like, where are you? They've texted you 17 times. And they're like, you never answered me because you've been playing this video game for 6 hours. So now you're starting to have problems with your friends or with your boyfriend or girlfriend because you've been spending all this time playing the video game. All right? So then the next 2 hours, are you kidding me? You wind up having no social life at all. You fail the exam because not only didn't you study for it, but now you had to take the exam and you didn't know anything about it, so you failed. You spend hours arguing with your parents explaining why you failed. So this is a huge cost, okay? So the more you do something, the greater the costs. The costs become like, first they start off as a little pile, then they become a hill, then they become a mountain. And that is the law of increasing opportunity cost. So it's very important that you understand these two laws, and I'm going to bring them up over and over and over and over again throughout the semester. Okay?